How's it going? It's me once again, just continuing this story. Um, where I left off last time, I just gave kind of a basic understanding of the type of situation we're working with. I'm probably going to redo that video because I was too inside my own head or something. I went off about the helicopter thing twice. The fact that if, something bad happens, that you're gonna die because no medical care can get to you. I was all confused because I'd recorded the video twice. The first time the microphone didn't work. But anyway, um, yeah, I also talked about that guy that they brutalized for, very little apparent reason. None that I could discern. And then that guy ended up committing suicide. How things work. But I guess what I'll talk about first is like the hierarchy of this place, or the structure, the internal structure when you're inside of a place like this. Number one, when you get there, you are nothing. You are like less than nothing. You're like not trusted at all. You're treated like shit constantly, like complete scum. And you'll be assigned somebody. And I don't remember what stupid name that they used. I think it was like Big Brother or something. You can think of it pretty much like a fucking battle buddy or something. It's supposed to be a guy that is linked to you, you know, and he's supposed to sort of break you in, or not, like indoctrinate you and sort of help you understand like what to do and like the rules, and act also sort of like a snitch who's always like watching what you do and can like report back and be like the eyes and ears. Um, you know, there's that level. Like, first you're stuck at this beginning stage where nobody trusts you for like a couple of weeks or maybe a month or something like that, where you're just guarded like 24/7. You're like allowed like no privileges at all. Like I described before, somebody sleeps on top of you while you sleep. There's stuff I'm probably forgetting that came with that status, but then you move up to another level that's what I guess you call like trusted. So you're like on a one tier up now. And so somebody doesn't have to sleep on top of your body while you're sleeping. And you're allowed to like basic, you know, privileges or like freedoms or whatever. Like, this is a really weird thing, but the food was so bad that they would actually reward people who had like snitched or like done something for them with spices like salt or like pepper or paprika or cayenne pepper or something like that, depending on like what you did for them, or like whatever, like if somebody's trying to escape and you like ratted them out, like you get to choose like up to 3 spices that you could use to like put in your food so it doesn't taste so shitty. But it was just like a one-time deal. Like, you didn't keep getting them, you just got them like once, and then once they're gone, it's like you have to do something else to get more. And it sounds stupid, but it's a very highly prized commodity, especially salt. You know, uh, Even, I mean, going back to like ancient times, you like pre-Islamic Arabia. I mean, just thousands of years, the Roman Empire, like they traded and had wars over spices, just to flavor the food, to make their lives a little less miserable. But then there's one tier above that where what I talked about before, how you get like a code name, like all the people that work there, they use code names, and then you're given a new name, like in a cult, like let's say you join some weird cult, and like they start saying like your name, like no, from now on, like no longer will you be called Joe Smith or Bob, Anderson. You'll be called like Brother Absalon or something, and so they all call you like Brother Absalon, not like Bob Anderson. That's like the type of thing it was. It's really, really weird. And the way that you attain this status is like a long, secretive, like initiation process, which already this story is like difficult for like the average person to believe. I mean, it's hard enough for me to contend with in my mind that it actually happened. Like when you go back into the world and you're going through like a supermarket and everything seems like all normal. Like nobody has any feeling of danger, or like a bunch of livestock walking around, and you're just like have knowledge of this stuff that goes on just like out of their view. I mean, it can make you feel really crazy. But so the story is already like pushing the boundaries of like credibility. But this is what would happen. This is like the basic procedure for getting a new name. What you'd have to do first is at these places, you would perform this act, or whatever you want to call it, where you're separate, you're actually kicked out, and you're made to live like on your own, like whether you live or die or like whatever. So like normally everybody is moving like in a big group of people, like I said before, like a platoon or something, right? They'll kick you out, and so you're on your own, and you have to like rely on only yourself and like what you can find and like scavenge in like a sort of like life or death type of thing, where you'll follow them, like you're supposed to follow them like whenever they move. Like it's not like somebody comes up and says like, all right, we're packing up, like let's go. Like you have to like track them, like track their footprints and like things that they leave behind, or like whatever. You have to stay behind them, like you maybe a quarter mile or something like that. You're not allowed to get close at all, but because what they're told to do, not just the guards and like, but also the prisoners, is to treat you like a wild animal that's following them. So if you get too close, they'll like run out and be like, get out of here, like swinging at you with a stick or like yelling. Like you're supposed to be like dehumanized and like treated like an animal, pretty much. And so the time that you have to go through this, and like people are, they're not allowed to talk about you either. Like even outside of your presence, like they're not allowed to refer to you or to like in casual conversation. Like you're over here, you're alone, and like all the people are somewhere else. If they can't even refer to you that you exist, like they're supposed to pretend that you're like it never existed, that you never were there, and they don't know you, and like and blah blah blah. It's really weird. And so the time that you're out on this walkabout type thing can vary. I mean, it's because like the outward reason they give for this is it's like spiritual enlightenment or some sort of BS. The real thing is like punishment. I mean, you're like literally you're left to die. Like they will let you because how like food comes in, like these relief agency, like rice, like all this bullshit, they'll have a black SUV like bring it in and like dump it off on the side of like a fire road, like out in the middle of nowhere. And then you're supposed to go collect it. It's like a fucking airplane, like in the military or something, like a fucking airplane dropping like supplies, and then you have to go and like collect the supplies, or a helicopter or whatever. So like they would go and collect the supplies, and then I would have to come afterwards when nobody's around and collect like whatever's left and try to subsist off that and like do whatever I can, like using my own faculties like MacGyver in order to kind of jury rig some sort of way that I can live out there. And but the reality is it's punishment. Like nobody likes doing that. It's to think of it like spiritual enlightenment, it's just really laughable. You're just like being tortured. And so, some people would be out there for a couple weeks, some people out there for a month or whatever. I was out like that for a month and a half, or I mean, it was a long, long period of time. I think I had been out in that status of, I guess you call it untouchable, for longer than anybody who has ever been in that place. Because how I live my life is, my parents are abusive, whatever, so I was always alone. I'd be like in my room reading or on the computer or something like that. I didn't really like make friends, or in high school or like whatever. So what they said is like, this guy's always alone anyway. So what do we care? Like, just leave him out there like 2 months or whatever. It doesn't matter. He's already used to it, And that was a really surreal time of my life. That just those 2 months of being on my own. I mean, I'm following this group of people, but they might as well not exist. It's like I'm tracking them from so far away and setting up shelter and stuff like that in some of the places I can never forget. It's very, very disturbing, because no longer when you're out on this untouchable experience, like you're not given these strict rules, like you're not watched over by a guard, and there are no guards at all when you're out on this. So one of the things, and it sounds funny, but it's the truth. For like these months, and months that you're there, like since they're watching you all the time when you take a shit or take a piss, or like all the time you're being watched, nobody can masturbate. So like once, like the biggest uplift relieving thing for these people is like once you get put out on this life or death thing, you're finally able to masturbate without getting in trouble for it, or somebody uh you know being embarrassed by it or whatever. So yeah, I'm not going to talk about that, but that just goes to show you like how desperate the situation was. But you would I mean, very few times in a person's life in the modern day are you out for months at a time completely alone, no electricity whatsoever. I mean, you're making fire. When I made fire, I did it like ancient, primitive, like Stone Age person. Like, it's called a bow drill. It's essentially like the concept is you have like a straight piece of wood or slightly curved, like a bow and arrow. Pretty much, you make a bow and arrow and you twist it around a straight, like a stick, that has a point on it, like like a stake, yeah, I guess, like they stab through a vampire. It's got like a pointed end on the end. You use a rock and you hold the top and you run the bow along the stake as it's pressed into another piece of wood. This creates like friction, which eventually creates like an ember, which you have to transfer into like kindling that you've scavenged. You blow into it, you have to keep it safe from wind, and then you have to transfer that to like a fire, like actual wood that'll burn. It's very difficult. Like if you've ever seen a cartoon or some TV show where it shows two guys, or I mean a guy rubbing his two hands together, like he's got a stick and he's rubbing his hands trying to make fire. That's essentially the same thing. It will, except for the addition of the tool that you have to also make yourself. Like you don't just get given one. Like I had to go out and find a tree and break a branch off and take a shoelace and create this bow and arrow thing to create fire. So you're out there like that. You're totally alone, total isolation from all humanity, all human contact. Like you're not allowed to talk to anybody. You receive like no letters. You receive like nothing. So a lot of things can happen to a person when they're in that state for that long. I mean, people lost at sea, right? After a shipwreck, and they're like a total like delusional mess by the time like somebody rescues them. Other people that had done this, they had hallucinated very bad, like that they were being attacked by like thousands of rats or something. When they'd wake up in the middle of the night. I mean, all sorts of stuff. Dreams too. When you're in this state, I don't know what causes this, and it's some sort of phenomenon that's not really studied. I don't know if it's due to some sort of psychological, predisposition, or if it's has to do with electronic interference, like radio waves. But if you're out in a place that's that remote and you're sleeping there, no electronic devices and totally primitive, your dreams and nightmares as well will become much more vivid, like unspeakably many, many times greater. So if it's hard to explain, but it's here in the civilized world, you have a dream or a nightmare, you might only kind of remember it, or you might remember certain details, or it's like kind of vague or foggy. Out there, every single dream or nightmare, every single night, is like the most vivid, lucid experience that you've ever had in your life. So if you're predisposed, like I am, to having really bad nightmares, your time out there is not very good, because you wake up, like let's say you have like a horrific nightmare that's super real. You wake up and you're just like sleeping on the ground by a bush out in the middle of a desert, and it's covered in snow, and it's the middle of the night, and there's nobody around, no one to talk to, like nothing. You're just like tormented, haunted, sitting there. And I would sit there, late at night, like I remember one time there was a blood moon, and I was in this untouchable state. I was following these people. I set up my little area where I would like sleep or whatever on top of this hill. It was overlooking this big valley, and I would just I really was so depressed. I just sat on that hill. I watched this blood moon, and the moon turns that weird orangish red color, and it reflecting off of the snow, with all white. It looked really kind of a trippy scene. It looked like Mars, or I don't know, like a alien planet. So, yeah, you're in that state, and then eventually you just get like taken out of it. It's totally random and arbitrary when you get taken out of this untouchable state where you're allowed to come back. And so now I guess this is like a third tier, which is that you've gone through that experience and then you've come back. So you're kind of above the people who haven't done it yet. And then there's another tier, which is like the highest possible tier that you can attain as like a prisoner, which is like the code name. And this is where it gets really crazy. But I assure you that this is 100% real. And, crazy hippie type new age people will do this type of stuff, not think twice about it. Now, how this works is you know that there is a ritual that's involved in getting like a new name, because somebody will be there like one day, they'll disappear for a while, and when they come back their like personality is like different, or like their demeanor is different, and you're told to refer to them by this new name. And when you ask them about it, they say, I'm not allowed to talk about it. Like, it's very strict secrecy. Like, you're not allowed to ask questions about it, you're not allowed to talk about it, or anything that entails it whatsoever, like, at all. And so, it's like you're afraid because, because the way that it works is they choose people for this ritual randomly. So it's total. You don't know when it's your turn to be like taken for this ritual, and you don't know what the hell this ritual is supposed to be. You don't know if it's painful, if it's like horrific, or like whatever. Like, I mean, a million thoughts run through your mind, like every horror movie you've ever seen. But, one day you'll be sleeping there after you've come back from the untouchable state. You're on like this third tier, where you're just, maybe you've been assigned as like a big brother or like a battle buddy or something to like some other guy who's now at the lowest level where people are sleeping on him. They'll come at like 3 or 4 in the morning, like early in the morning, just before sunrise. Somebody will wake you up, one of the guards, and they'll like make sure to not wake anybody else up. They'll take you. It'll be you and like, from what I remember when it happened to me, it was like 2 other people. So they take, us 3, and they take us like a long ways in the dark, and like nobody's speaking, like nobody's asking questions. They take you to this hill, like a not a mountain, like a large hill, a couple 100 feet high, that's plateaued across the top, so it's like more or less like completely flat. So you march up this hill, and there's a giant symbol made out of rocks, like on the top of this hill. Like the hill is more or less circular, so there's some giant, I don't know, a sigil, a symbol, a whatever, like made out of stones or rocks that are set up. Like I don't know what symbol it was either, and I'm pretty. I mean, I know all the world religions, and I know like a lot of symbology type stuff. I could not identify it, or at least I don't remember. Maybe if I could remember it right, with picture perfect memory, I could identify it, but at the time I couldn't. But it was circular in nature, and it had other stuff like in the interior, like designs. Uh, there's a couple like of these guards up there, or like counselors, or like whatever, and like more higher ranking people, because there'd be like higher ranking people in this organization that would spend most of their time like over in Bend, like at the office or the building where they had taken me and like made me strip naked in front of all these people. That is like where a lot of the high executives like worked out of, because they're not, they're getting paid too much to be sitting out in the middle of nowhere. So sometimes they would show up for special reasons, in the black SUVs or whatever. It was always a black like Chevy Suburban, so they'd come out, and for specific, reasons or purposes or whatever. Like one time they did like some sort of testing on us. I don't know if it was some sort of psychological like IQ test or I really don't know. It just had to do with answering a bunch of questions, and they build a psychological profile of you. But some of these people were out there, who had taken this long trip, many hours, to like be present for this ritual. It's immediately got like at first I thought, okay, this is like some sort of college like fraternity thing, and it's just going to be all for laughs or something. And immediately there's a guy that acts, one of the guards or one of the executives or whatever. They act as like a high priest, I guess, like the person who leads a ceremony. Immediately launches into this psychotic, just bizarre tribal, you know, outburst. I don't know how to describe it. It's like something you'd see in Apocalypse Now or something. He grabbed a stick, and this is like something that is like a satan or a like Aleister Crowley, occult satanic type of thing. I mean, even what I'm about to describe, Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin did it on stage like many times during concerts because he would do a little segment during a concert where he would play the guitar using like a violin bow, and then he would use the bow as a magic wand in order to do this ritual, which I'm going to describe, which is you take a stick, which is like a magic wand or whatever, and the high priest will call on each of the cardinal directions. So north, east, south, west. This is something they also do like at Freemason lodges or whatever. I don't know all about that, but that's what I hear. They even have like the whole lodge kind of set up in this way, like with the cardinal directions, and one of the chairs, like people sit in different chairs for different directions, and I guess like the chair that's for the south is always left empty. That's what I've heard. I don't know. But anyway, this guy uses a stick and he'll like point to the north and he'll say like gods of the north, like spirits of the north, and he'll name off like all these names, weird like religious names, like some Call of Cthulhu type thing. I don't know, like weird ancient god type names, like what I don't know, an example like Zabulon or fucking Asmodeus or whatever. And they'll do that for each direction. They'll do like north, west, south, east, whatever. I don't know the order. And they've called the whole reason for that is to call these spirits or these gods to this hilltop to witness like this ceremony. And they'll do everything like smudging, like using sage that's been bundled into what's called a smudge stick in order to they'll light it on fire and walk around, and it's like incense, like in a Catholic church. It's to cleanse the air of like unwanted spirits or influences, stuff like that. So it's pretty intense, and you're standing there the whole time, wondering what the hell is this. And they'll just do this like I forget the whole rigmarole of everything they did. They're like jumping around, like yelling out all this stuff and prancing around and just acting like crazy, like savages. and it was just like this weird Aleister Crowley hippie type shit. And then they come up and they mark you. Like they use like this is what I remember, and you know, maybe I'm remembering wrong. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. That you were marked on the forehead or like on your face with ashes or like some substance, and then you were given a new name, like supposedly in the presence of these spirits or gods or whatever. Where, like, for me, it was Rising Sun, and there'd be like a whole like thing behind why the name is chosen for you or whatever. Like a huge monologue that you're given that's like about why they chose this specific name for you. Like, for me, they're like, it was, and it's described like, not in plain terms, but like in a book or something, like prose. It said like, the earth is dark and like animals cower in fear, and like the predators that search for them, they hide in their burrows and they await the warmth of the sun that will rise and give knowledge to, like, that type of stuff. You know what I mean? And I'm like, rising sun, whatever. I don't care. Whatever, call me whatever you want. Just get me off this hill already. And they do all this weird cult stuff where they're like, welcome, brother, and they're like hugging you, and they're saying like you've finally been transformed, like you're like a new person now, you're like a new being, like the old person, like your real name or whatever, like they're dead now, like they've already died, they're gone, and now you're like this new person. Very very weird. And then when you come back, you're told very like, don't talk about it, like don't talk about it, like very sternly, and you're not allowed to discuss anything about it, whatever. Probably stuff I'm forgetting, but that's the general gist of it. And then you're king of the shit pile. You're like the highest ranked prisoner in a prison. If that makes you feel any better about your life. I guess it does, when you can kind of have this sub-commandant, you know, authority to an extent. But there is one other thing. I mean, the thing you could compare it to is like a capo or a Sonderkommando, like in a Nazi concentration camp, supposedly. Like a Jew who would be selected to sell out the other Jews in order to like lead them to slaughter, supposedly. So it's a really weird position because you're like middle managing at that point between these people who are like psychopaths that are like abusing and raping people and their victims, and being like an intermediary to trying to resolve like disputes or whatever. It's very strange. But here's a tale. I mean, I'm just gonna go off on a story here, and unlike last time, I won't interrupt every couple of seconds to try and explain some sort of overarching, facet of this place. Well, this is by far, I would probably say, I don't know. I mean, what do you put on a ranked list? But it's up there. It's at the very tippy top of things that really traumatized me, disturbed me forever. We were doing a march, like how I said, like march every day. And for whatever reason, normally you do them during the daytime. And this time they decided to do it at night, which is dangerous. Already it's dangerous what you're doing to begin with. And then at nighttime, things get a lot more dangerous. And number one, you do have predators out there, like mountain lions, cougars. I don't know if there are bears up there. I would assume that there probably are. Um, all sorts of stuff like that, which will take you down. Like if you're in a line of people and like a mountain lion gets you by the back of your neck, comes up behind you when you have no idea it's there and takes you down, like your whole trachea, your whole like esophagus is completely, you can't scream, no, like they can take you down, drag you off, eat you, and like none of the guys in front of you would even know that it had happened. They would stop somewhere, turn around and realize like there's one less person. Like that sort of stuff, obviously. Number two, temperature. Very cold at night. I mean, like I've said before, Stalingrad cold. Number three is you have holes in the ground, snake holes, rabbit holes, stuff like that. Snow falls, covers it over. It acts like a tiger trap or something like that, or a pitfall, because you have this thin layer of snow over like a huge hole, or maybe a tiny one, so you can fall into something like that, which may or may not have snakes in it or something. But even worse than that is like you step into a smaller hole, that's just big enough to fit most of your foot in, and then you twist your ankle or you break your ankle, and then you're really screwed. I mean, then it becomes instantly goes from being a shitty experience to being life or death. Like, get ready to freeze to death, get ready to starve to death, and all the people around you could give really less of a shit what happens to you, which, I'll exemplify that now. We were going on this march. There's a kid that was like not I mean, he was not equipped for this type of brutality physically. Like, he was not, I mean, some of us, like, have been football players or, athletes or, have done all this stuff. Some of these people are like scrawny little nerdy kids, or, they're overweight or like whatever. So, I mean, it can be a lot harder for certain people. Now, we were going at night and we walked ungodly distance on just who knows how many miles. And it was, it was pushing the limits of human endurance, because by the time we got towards the end, I was entering a state of delirium. Like, I was having hallucinations. I was fading in and out of consciousness. Like, I would take a it's like I would lose consciousness in between steps, like I would lift up my foot to take a step, I would fall, I would go unconscious, and when my foot hit the ground or whatever, it would jolt me back awake, and then I would repeat the process over again. I mean, I was very much at my limit, and I knew a lot of these people that were not, as athletic as me were a lot worse off. I mean, it sounds, like it's just some hard thing that you suck up and deal with. No, this is like extermination. This is like, you will die. Like, you will perish on the ground from this sort of physical activity that you're made to endure at like gunpoint. So we get to this place and they're like, all right, that's enough. Like, set everything down and like go sleep on the ground. And they were doing like a head count of everybody that, we had in our group. And, I don't remember what the number was, 28 or whatever. And they're like, oh, we only got 27 people. I mean, somebody's missing. and we had been walking for so long that whatever, somebody's missing. Whatever happened to him, who knows? You've got a large, huge swath of land that they could possibly be in, assuming that they just dropped, onto the ground and they didn't try to find shelter, like move somebody somewhere else. I mean, this is a tough job for like a Coast Guard search and rescue, like fully equipped Black Hawk helicopters, infrared, searchlights. Like this would be a tough task to find this guy alive. And it's just getting colder and colder out. And they were kind of, I mean, it wasn't much of a debate, but they kind of talked about the fact, like, should we go out there and get him? Should we hope that he's just lagging behind and like shows up here? I mean, they weren't really considering these options. They'd already made up their mind to just like say, fuck it, and you know, take a breather, like just go to sleep or whatever. So they're like, nah, just let him die out there. That's literally something somebody said. Like, yeah, just forget about him. Let him fucking die out there. Like very nonchalant. And like maybe this is accelerated by like the state I was in, where I was not totally with it. Like, I was so delirious. I'd be like the guy who would try and climb a fucking barbed wire fence at like a prison or a concentration camp and just get shot. Because I've just lost my mind and like I don't understand the consequences of like the rules anymore. But the guy, I took pity on him, and he's a fellow traveler. He's in this place with me. I don't know if he's my best friend or anything like that, but I was like, no way, man. That like to any normal person, to any person with a heart or like morality, like you say, no freaking way, man, that we're gonna sit here while that guy's out there. He could still be alive, and like every minute, every second that we sit here is like losing his chances of survival. Like if we need to act like right now, like this very second, like the clock is ticking, and they're pretty much telling me like fuck you, just like quit complaining, shut up, like lay down, and I just entered this mental state where I was like, fuck this. If I go out there and die, like what's the point? Is this like any sort of life in itself to be stuck in this place with all of these people just like suffering day in, day out, like just being maligned and abused, beaten, degraded, just talked down to, injured, just laughed at in my misery and my pain. It's like, who gives a fuck if I go out there and I, freeze to death or anything like that? So I just thinking, to hell with you people. You can come, you can beat me, tase me, shoot me. I don't give a fuck, because that's pretty decent options compared to the alternative at this point. So what I did is I dropped all my stuff on the ground until I was as bare bones as you can get. Just enough to keep me warm, like normal body temperature. A few maybe like tools or just various miscellaneous stuff, and I left. I went off on my own. They like kind of tried to stop me, but like not really. And like once I got beyond the distance, like the campfire, where it's pitch black dark, like this is on a night where it's cloudy, like very little moon, very a sliver of the moon. So it's just totally, I mean, it's like being in a room with no windows with the lights off underground. So they're not going to go out and try and hunt me down. That's too much effort. They're like, in their mind, probably like, screw this guy. Let him go off and die with the other one. We'll just like go find him tomorrow or later or never, and then we can file some sort of report with the county coroner and, absolve ourselves of all the blame and whatever. So I go out there, and this is like, forgive me because this is pretty. I mean, I try, when you go through some certain stuff in your life, you gotta deal with some stuff. You have to man up and be a hard guy, but this is one of the things that makes me very not so hard anymore. I was walking out in this place in a fever dream, time and stuff like that is like irrelevant. I have no way of knowing that, I'm walking, I'm exhausted, I'm half, awake, conscious, I'm starved, I'm, at every physical limit of the human body. And I'm like emotionally just decimated because have in my hands now like this kid, younger than me. His life or death, his fate is up to me, some retarded guy, some idiot, walking around out there because feels bad or guilty or whatever. I don't know why, because I thought it was wrong. Just some guy who doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I just try and backtrack. I try and follow the tracks that we left, in a reverse direction. I use some geographic features and stuff like that in order to orientate myself. And I went for a while. Like, once again, distance, time, these things are all, very hard to quantify given the circumstances. Could have been 20 minutes, could have been 2 hours. No idea. Really. But I was going through the darkness and I was looking, hoping on the ground, looking for evidence, like anything, like a dropped article of clothing, impression in the snow. It was already like, it was snowing the whole time, so these footprints are like starting to fade, stuff like that. Any evidence, like some direction that I could go off of, like any item that was dropped, it would be buried, covered by snow. I wouldn't be able to find it. So I'm, trying my hardest, in this limited amount of time to find some sort of indication, like a clue where I can find this guy or his body. If I can find his dead body, at least. Who knows what happened to him, whatever. And so I'm pretty much, I'm not on my hands and knees, but, I'm down low to the ground and I'm, checking things out and whatever. And I noticed there's like what looked like a rock, like a boulder, and I went over to it a little closer, just incidentally. I didn't think of it as anything but a rock at the time. And I noticed that this rock had a weird color to it. It was orange. I mean, not fully, but there were parts of it that were orange, which is like the jumpsuit, like the uniform that they give to us. And so I knew I had found something. I got closer, and what it was is he was face down. So all the stuff that he was carrying on his back and his backpack, which was just pressing him into the snow. I mean, however many pounds it was, 50 pounds just on his back, compressing his diaphragm so it's hard to breathe, everything. That formed what looked like a rock, you know what I mean? And he was underneath it, and he's partially kind of covered. I didn't know if he was alive or dead at the time. I mean, it's like if you've ever come across somebody, who's very seriously injured, or maybe they are dead. You don't know, like at first, and you're kind of in this state. You're like, oh my God, you're sort of a panic, you know, and it's like you're trying to check like their pulse or like any indication, like it's some sort of vital. And I'm 15. This kid's like fucking 13 out here alone. Not unlike, I mean, if you ever read that book Holes or seen the movie Stanley Yelnats, this is pretty. I mean, that's very easy compared to this place, but I mean the general, you know, whatever is similar. The general way that things are between that book and this, except in the book they had buildings to sleep in, and they also had a truck that brought them water. But I start talking to this guy, like, when growing up, the abuse of fucking paramedics, police at my house all the time. I kind of tried to emulate them and whatever. Um, Try and get them talking, you know, keep them awake. So I start talking to this guy, like, listen, I'm here. We found you. It's going to be all right. Nothing to worry about. Like, you're gonna be okay. I did not believe any of that when I looked at this guy. I was like, holy smokes, he's a goner. Like, this guy's like halfway to hell already, and we're still far away, alone. It's not like I had him, with a bunch of people standing around ready to call with a radio, a fucking helicopter, or whatever. So, I didn't really get any response from him, and it was no like indication that he was alive. His limbs, were, I mean, it's like moving a corpse, just dead weight. And I picked him up. I did like a fireman's carry style of thing. I mean, when I could, sometimes it's too much. I was exhausted, so it's like I was carrying him in different ways. Probably at times I was dragging him across the ground or whatever for what seemed like an eternity. Just calling to God, crying. Just the absolute, probably lowest point of my entire life. That just the type of stuff that you don't even want to hear about it, let alone see it, let alone participate in it. And I pulled that guy, carried him for forever. It might have been for me, might as well be a million years. That moment just exists for eternity in my mind. Just a feeling of loneliness, total desperation, total isolation. Like you're trying to keep a guy alive. You've just been screwed over, left for dead. You're totally just fucked. You're out in the middle of nowhere. You wonder like where God is at like a time like that. You just, like your whole soul, it's just so lonely. You and a dying man, and just endless desert, and the night. Oppressive. But I took him for a while. Who knows how long. I was totally out of it. Totally out of it. Eventually, I saw the campfire. I mean, it's easy to see when everything else is so dark. Even a small source of light, you can see it from a ways off. So I made my way to that campfire, and I let this guy down on the ground on his back, And I was still talking to him, and I was trying to get him to wake up, and I was doing my best, And other people came over. I remember some of this stuff because this whole time I had been missing in action. They were like, I remember one of the things somebody said. I don't know who. He actually found him. It was just one of the last things I remember hearing before I passed out. Just I laid him down. I was like on my knees. I don't know if he was fucking dead or what. I laid down right next to him, same position on my back, like another dead body, and just fucking, that was it, conked out, lost consciousness. And I was laying there on the ground for I don't know how long, probably all night. And it was just, I don't know whatever happened to him. I don't know if he lived. I don't know if he died. I never saw him again. So there's no closure with that. But it was I don't know. There's something about it. Really, this is a part where in the other videos, before they got fucking deleted, where, I kind of started crying, can't really hold it together. When you have somebody, that they're in a real bad way, maybe like, you're in the military, whatever, something, they got shot, very bad, lung collapsing, like no help at all. There's no medical like aid anywhere. It's you and this guy. And this guy's, scared or whatever, or he's like out of it, and you're trying to keep him in this world. You're trying to keep him awake, and you're lying to him. You're telling him everything will be fine and it'll work out. It's not that bad, it's just just a flesh wound or something. Or no, it's, we'll get you taken care of, like no problem, like you'll be home. And remember, you start talking to them, try and take their mind off the situation. Like, remember, your mom or whatever, how she, makes that great food, and, we'll have you back, and, you'll be back and having all that food, and all these lies just to keep them in the, there in this world with us. None of it's true. This guy's probably gonna die, and it's the most gut-wrenching type of feeling where you're trying your best, you're doing everything that you can, and it's not enough. And it just seems so unjust. There's so many more people out there that deserve to be in this situation, deserve to die. And this is some kid who knows his story. Probably just a shit life. And I'm out there trying to, I have no, paramedic training, EMT training, anything like that, except stuff I've seen on TV. And I'm trying to like hold this guy together. I don't know. That's something you don't often get to experience in your life, and very, very disturbing. Very disturbing. Somebody's son, somebody's brother, cousin. It's just not right. So I'd sum up this whole thing, this whole experience, everything about it, very plainly. It's just not right. And it seems like it never ends, just goes on forever. All these people benefit out of it. I don't know. I really don't know what to think, Just is what it is. Bunch of people get together, figure out they can make a ton of money. Maybe involves some human suffering, neither here nor there. Got a few people whose job it is to stop this sort of stuff. Happen to be an old friend from college, or they paid him, $100,000 or whatever to just shut the fuck up about it, look the other way. Now you got yourself a business model, and beyond. Yeah, I don't know. It was weird that it extended beyond just financial, benefit. It extended into they desire to have complete control over these kids, like mentally, physically, emotionally, in every possible way. I mean, to create them into cult members, pretty much, that would do whatever that they asked. Anything. Come have sex with me. Come attack this person for me. Whatever. Like brainwashed, completely, like slaves. And like I mentioned in that other video, that guy who had somehow seen this, my first video, I guess somebody saw it posted on 4chan or something and sent it to him. I don't know the whole thing, but he was talking about at least one of these two groups. They're very closely linked. Synanon and Cedu. Now, this is where all this stuff came from back in the 60s. Oh, this whole network, this whole app, this entity, whatever you want to call it. That's where it all began. And here's an interesting pop culture fact for you. If you've ever seen the movie that George Lucas did before he did Star Wars, it's called THX 1138. The movie is about a bunch of people that live in like this dystopian society, underground, deep in the future, and they're all controlled by androids or some AI or something like that, whatever. Well, George Lucas needed a bunch of extras for that movie. People who live in this dystopian fictional society in the future. All the people they needed for the scenes, they needed to have their heads shaved and certain physical features, like a despondent look in their eyes or whatever. What they did is they contacted Synanon, and they got like 300 or 400 of the people under their control and sent them to George Lucas. And those are actually the people in the movie. So if you go back and you watch THX 1138, all of those people in that movie, except for Robert Duvall and that other famous actress, those are all real cult members from a place like I went to that were forced to act in the movie for George Lucas. Believe it or not. You can look that one up. You can take that check to the bank and cash it, because it is what happened. And it's Cedu. You can hear a guy talk about this on the Joe Rogan podcast. He got sent there. They actually had a guy who was a child serial killer and rapist who worked as the janitor there, the night shift janitor, for like 20 years. And there's like all of these like unsolved suspicious death cases in that area. There's like 20 something, like 27 kids who have been found like dead, mutilated, horrifically, like, dental record type of investigation. Now, a lot of these bodies they found at the bottom of a cliff, a very specific cliff that was close to a Cedu facility. So what they said, this cover-up, like how they covered up what they did to me, is they said these kids logically must have tried to run away from this place at night, and they ran, in a panic, a frenzy, and they must have tripped and fallen off of the cliff and landed, 100 feet below, and then animal predation accounts for like the mutilation of the body. Except not all the bodies were found at the bottom of this cliff. They're found all over the place. And they never investigated a single one as a homicide. Some of the bodies some of the people that had gone missing, the bodies were never recovered. And some of them had like certain parts removed, like fingers or certain things like teeth, stuff that like a pathological serial killer would keep as like a trophy of like a victim that they had like killed, like a necklace or a piece of bone or something to remind them of the kill. Now that has never no investigation with that. I mean, huge body count with that place. So these places are very above and outside the law, and very. I mean, you can come up with the craziest conspiracy theory about one of these places, and I could tell you it's probably not far off from the truth or the reality. I mean, these places are a whole other beast. It's something that is, you can't equate it to anything else. It's very troubling, unique phenomenon that mostly has essentially has its origins and its main operations within the continental United States. That's what I can say about it. But it operates all over the world, all sorts of countries, except places where, they don't allow that type of stuff. Very harsh, like third world countries where you go there and you kidnap a bunch of kids and take them to some place and start torturing them and brainwashing them. You probably have a bunch of angry, African militia guys with AK-47s, killing you all or whatever. Putting a tire around your neck and setting it on fire. I mean, they don't tolerate this type of stuff in a lot of countries. Here, it's all swept under the rug, kept out of the public radar. Everyone's apathetic enough, they don't give a shit about anything that's going on unless it affects them. So it's not hard to run an operation like this, especially in a remote area where you have, sheriffs and police departments that need money or whatever. So that's what I'm just going to leave you with right now. And I guess let us keep talking. It's hard to really categorize everything into these clean, neat categories or videos, where it's just about this one aspect and then I move on to another one. It all sort of blends together. It's all sort of interconnected in a way. So that's my testimony, which the FBI didn't care to hear when they did the murder and homicide investigation in 2009. And YouTube, I guess it was too offensive, so they had to delete my entire channel and every video I've ever made. It's probably what will happen to this channel too. And there it is, So stay tuned for any more whenever I can work up the strength or the emotional fortitude to talk about this stuff. Keep your eyes peeled, but that's all I have to say for now. So I hope you have a good day. Hope that everything is well in your life, and God bless you. Bye.